Yo, yo. You may have seen that I've actually just uploaded a video on YouTube. If you're probably watching this on YouTube, doing a deep dive on psychology and why we support suffering and how it's directly because of nature. And I go into detail in this video about how humans are effectively slaves to nature. They're slaves to nature's priorities and commands, effectively. So we need to break out of our slavery to nature, break out of the way of thinking that it's forcing upon us. So nature basically limits our intelligence, it makes us unintelligent, and it relies on unintelligence and irrationality for the forcing of life to exist. So I've just made a video about how the cycle of reproduction itself directly relies on stupidity and forcing life to be stupid. So that means that this process of evolution and reproduction directly relies on forcing life to be unintelligent, and it relies on limiting that life from becoming more intelligent. So it's kind of crazy, isn't it, really, to think that any life forms that sort of became more intelligent or mutated to have higher intelligence, they were sort of bred out of existence. They went extinct, whereas the more unintelligent life actually did better. So there's almost like a Goldilocks zone for life existing, and that Goldilocks zone is one of stupidity. And there's actually a limit to the level of intelligence that we can have. And it's strictly limited by nature in many different ways. But the most interesting or visible ways is that it causes us to support suffering, to be irrational, to be cruel, to be divided, animalistic. If you've ever thought that, wow, people are really stupid, it wasn't just you, and it's not just a hunch. It's actually true. People are stupid by design. If people weren't stupid, then they wouldn't exist, because basically life itself and reproduction, life basically is reproduction. Reproduction relies on people being stupid. It relies on life forcing its children to exist in unlimited amounts of cruelty. It's about not caring about your children. So that's a stupid thing. You have to be really stupid to just force children to be tortured, right? But that's exactly what nature managed to do. It managed to actually force life to be so stupid that it would put its children into extreme danger, because that served nature and that serves the god of reproduction almost. There is no god, but the process of nature, it's a powerful thing. It's an amazing thing. Life existing, again, any intelligent life just went extinct, and any stupid life managed to survive and reproduce. So that stupidity of reproducing has been reinforced by evolution. The system keeping us stupid has evolved to become more and more advanced and capable of keeping us unintelligent, so that we just keep reproducing. And as soon as we break out of that, that's when reproduction will stop, which is what we're trying to do at the pro-extinction movement. It's about not animalistically causing more suffering, but instead intelligently putting an end to suffering and forced existence. Okay, so with that sort of introduction out of the way, let's get some guests on.
Hello, James.
Hello, how's it going? Hello.
I'm an ethicist, I'm an anti-nihilist, I'm an animal rights activist. I've been vegan for 8 years at this point. I would preferably want a society that cares about wild animal suffering, but I don't really see a realistic path to reach that point if we don't even care about the suffering that we directly control, right? Like, if people are not concerned about paying for the fact that they breed sentient beings into existence just to be used as a commodity, I don't think we're getting there. Now, of course, I don't think we should be environmental vegans. I don't think we should just replace a lot of land use we're using with just wild habitats, because I understand how that could cause a lot of suffering. That's not really my position. If anything, like we could justify like using a lot of land for like biofuel or stuff like that, especially if we transition out of oil, I guess. Um, yeah, it's pretty much my position. Like I got a vasectomy. My girlfriend is
Yeah.
also an anti-nihilist.
So the funny thing is that veganism and antinatalism are actually bad for extinction, and they both actively cause more suffering. So I appreciate the sense,
Is it
and
because like
I was a vegan
compassionate genes are not getting
antinatalist.
passed on then?
Basically, there's a couple of reasons. Yeah, compassionate genes aren't getting passed on, and also for every human that doesn't exist, it causes more wild animals to exist and suffer. So, you
Right.
having a house, you having a road to drive on, you having factories building your stuff, that takes away land from animals who would otherwise be suffering. So, veganism and antinatalism both contribute to more suffering than they prevent, because they transfer it onto wild animals, who are the
See, I
most
agree. Yeah.
underprotected group and the easiest group to sort of transfer suffering onto because no one cares about them.
But ideologically, like, do you understand how, like, if we need to have like some eventual society that actually values wild animal suffering, don't you think we should first of all like maybe have a transitory period where we go through a time where we care about the suffering we're directly responsible of at the very least, because people don't even
No,
seem to give
because
a shit about that.
that's the opposite of intelligence, right? To only care about the suffering that you're causing is an
That's like the
incredibly
first part. Then you can
irrational.
you can care about suffering in
No,
general,
no,
which
no,
I
no.
do.
So we shouldn't encourage people to be irrational and to discriminate. We should just cut that out and go straight to rationality and straight to non-discrimination. So, trying to convince or trying to raise awareness of a message, it's much better to raise awareness of a smart message than an unintelligent message.
Like
There's no
I feel I
point.
devolved into animal rights progressively because like even though like at the core I'm a negative utilitarian, right? Like I want to reduce suffering as much as possible. I don't see any like kind of like viable path to accomplish this, like the extinction of all sentient life, which like I think would be a cool thing. Like if AI could do this, like fuck yeah, right? Um, except if we make AI sentient accidentally, that would be bad, right? That's another concern you probably have, I would assume.
It's on the cards, yeah.
Yeah, I don't. I understand why like the argument needs to be there, and why like people like you have to exist, and why you do what you do. Like
But the
I
thing
get.
is that to
I
only
just don't.
care about
I
the
don't
suffering that
genuinely
we
see a path
cause.
towards like like us with like super high technology, arguably higher technology than what we have nowadays, coming to this consensus like in the next century or so at the very least. Like I think a lot of shit needs to be considered in the whole like cause and effect in order to get there eventually.
Well, no, not really. In fact, the evidence shows the exact opposite.
So are you an
Um,
accelerationist? I would assume.
what's that?
It's like you want like society and technology and like capitalism to progress like as quickly as possible just to get to the end point already. Like fuck it.
No.
Oh, okay. Sorry, elaborate. Sorry.
So, I mean, the problem that we have in this world is that there are two different types of humans. One type is enslaved to nature and
Yep.
can't get out of that.
Yep.
And then you have a very rare type of humans who can. So it's really about gathering those rare humans who have broken out of this, who have evolved past nature's ways of thinking, imposed ways of thinking. Because nature supports suffering, most people support suffering, and unless you're taking action to put an end to that suffering, then you're supporting it. But that's against nature, right? So that's why those who are most against nature are the smallest number of people. Vegans and other humans, they don't really count or matter in terms of ending all suffering. So getting more people to be vegan isn't going to help. It doesn't actually make a difference.
How about educating more people on how evolution works?
Well, the problem, what I'm getting at is that there's
Because like
the
if people don't
problem.
even if they
No,
don't
no.
even
What I'm
understand the game
getting
they're
at is
playing,
that you can't educate people out of that nature slavery effectively.
Well, I mean,
So
you only can like even perceive it as slavery in the first place if you understand how evolution works. Like I think having like at least a framework like the selfish gene like already does wonders to kind of like convince you like, oh, I'm just a temporary like suffering, like machine that some of my cells are using to reproduce.
Yeah,
I'm,
but
like
like I say,
like I'm just a temporary multicellular form from like one zygote to another.
yeah, but the thing is that you have effectively a new branch of humanity forming here, and it really is just those rare few who are actually going to agree to help end all suffering. So vegans, they're not actually, they are still in the first category of humans where they want life to continue, they want suffering to continue, and they won't do
Personally I
anything.
don't, right? Like I don't, and I think
Right,
this, but
but
obviously you have
the
a bunch of
difference the
yeah.
difference I'm talking about, the distinction between these two types of humans are those who are working towards the end of all suffering and those who aren't, right? So there's very few people actually working towards the end of all suffering. Most people don't care, and the reason for that is that as against nature as possible, right? So if nature and the natural human way of thinking, which is enslaved to nature, is as accepting of suffering as possible, then extinctionists are as against suffering as possible.
Like
So you have the most common type of human favoring suffering, favoring nature, and then obviously the rarest type goes exactly against nature and against all of the
But
suffering.
I think that understanding nature makes people more likely to like call it out as bullshit. Like to see it as the
Well,
mindless replication game
if
that
you
it is,
want
right?
to be
Like if
part of
people
the
are still lying
movement,
to themselves about
well,
like
listen.
creationism and stupid religion.
The thing is, unless you're actually working on working with the movement, then you're not going to be addressing these things properly. You're going to be you're just sort of standing outside and throwing in random comments, basically. So you're not
Not
going to
really.
understand
Like
it properly. You're not going to be working towards, thinking about it properly unless you're actually getting stuck in.
but here's the thing. Like I think you won't get a lot of people understanding the whole situation that sentient life finds itself in, right? Like the predicament that sentient life is in on planet Earth right now, if they don't even understand how the fuck evolution works, right? Like you were able to reach that position, and I was too, because we have some pretty good education on biology.
But there are people who understand evolution perfectly and still don't care about it, right? So I think you're quite incorrect there where you're making these assertions. At the movement, we've actually looked into this stuff. We've got experience with it. You don't, right? So we are kind of the experts on it.
So based on your analysis, like what's the best way to get people to care about like reducing all suffering to zero? Because like I agree with that goal, right? Like fundamentally, like in my actions, like maybe you find some contradictions and such, but like your value system is fundamentally the same. Like if you give me the button right now, like I would smash that shit, no hesitation, not even a second of hesitation. Like I know what's happening on this planet right now. I know the sheer amount of suffering that's happening. Like here's the thing, even if we ignore wild animal suffering, which is like the huge majority, even if we only look at like our human societies, when you look at what other animals go through in farms and shit, like you can already see it's like an overwhelmingly negative game, right? But like, yeah, wild animal suffering makes it like pretty much like Lovecraftian horror, cosmic horror level, awareness at this point. And yeah, like fundamentally, I would press the button. It's just like, how do we make the button? How do we get there?
Well, you have to join the movement and work towards it. And also, there won't necessarily be a button. We might have to do it in much slower, more traditional ways.
Right, that's fine. No, I know it. It's not a literal, but like you get the point. It's like, how do we reduce sentient life suffering to zero effectively?
Yeah, so how is to grow the movement, basically. That's the only way to do it.
Okay, and then what do we do?
Yeah, well, watch some of my videos about it.
Okay.
I've just put out quite a few. Basically, we have to grow the movement to make it possible to end all suffering, get more people working on these projects with us. If you don't have anyone to do it, it's never going to happen. The more people you have, the easier it gets.
But if you want to maintain like the desire to end suffering in your societal values, like if that's something you truly want to instill in people, to have enough people to support the movement so that we can eventually like do something, right? Because like even if we're like 0.3% of the whole global population, even if we're just 2%, like as long as we have the 98% who want to keep breeding and they want suffering to keep going, like what the fuck are we supposed to do, right? It's like, how do we overtake that majority? I don't know. I feel like if there's any chance, like you need people to develop more compassion at the very least, right? And I think I think considering other animals, not just the animals we farm, but also wild animal
Well,
suffering. Which, by the way, I actually talk
I
about this in the
appreciate
vegan
your
movement.
opinion. I
But like in the
appreciate your
vegan movement, I
perspective on
do
it.
talk about wild animal suffering a lot. Like I don't know if you know like about Humane Hancock on YouTube. He made content about this. Like he was talking about Cosmic Skeptic about like wild animal suffering. He made a video on the topic. I should send it to you. But like I think we should have an awareness of this, right? Like any person out there who's susceptible to care about reducing suffering, which is the case for a lot of vegans, should be aware of the problem of wild animal suffering, right? Because as long as people don't really see it, like they won't really come to the conclusion of like extinction completely is the only right thing to do, right? So I don't know. I feel like there's an understanding of the world, like a form of education that we happen to be lucky to find ourselves into, in a sense, that allowed us to reach this position. I want more people to have access to this because effectively we'll create more members for you movement at the end of the day if I teach people about wild animal suffering, if I talk to people about ethology so that they can be more keenly aware of the suffering and the sensibilities and the intelligence of other wild animals out there who have their own experiences, often horrible experiences.
Well,
right?
the thing is, I would say that unless you're actually working for our goals, then you're not going to be aligned with our goals and what benefits them, right? So you can't say, I'm going to do this and maybe it'll benefit you. That's just a guess.
How
right?
will it not?
Well, it's just a guess.
It's not just a guess. Wait,
My
okay.
point is that unless you're in the movement and working with the movement, then you can't claim to be supporting it. Because how could you possibly know what you're talking about? Anyway, appreciate you coming on. Thank you for your time. Check out our website, learn more about us, about why veganism and antinatalism are bad. Go on our full FAQ page on our website. It's all explained in detail. We've also got videos explaining it. And consider joining the movement and working with us. Hello, how's it going?
Hi, I just want to clear this up. You mean all extinction for all life, right? I just want to,
Yeah.
Okay. Because Singe came up here and thought it was just human extinction. You mean like total asteroid 2027 wipeout planet, right?
Well, an asteroid wouldn't do the trick. We need to be a bit smarter about it than that. But
Okay, so what are you gonna do about like extraterrestrial life? So we got to go harder, like Star Wars program, and just mass blow up the rest of the planets, right? Exoplanets. We got to totally eliminate it, right?
Yeah, I mean, it might not be blowing them up. It might be something else. But
what would you suggest since we can't get there?
Can't get where?
To those other planets. Right now, we don't have space travel, so
so
that might be a little kink in your plan.
No, not at all.
So how would you get to those planets that might have life?
Just exist now doesn't mean that's a kink in the plan, right? You just develop it.
So, but if you want human life and the whole planet to go extinct first, then that means you have to continue existing to get to those other planets to make them extinct.
Yeah, that's right. That's the plan.
Okay, so then you would still be alive to do that, right?
Yeah.
Because then you have to still go to those planets, right? So isn't that just subverting your whole plan?
No, it's the plan really revolves around being responsible for suffering and prevention of suffering. So making sure that we do that as far and wide as possible is the best thing to do.
Okay. So why don't you just describe your basis of the plan then, how that would work?
Yeah, so we need to take over the world. Then we need to start doing animal extinction, removing our dependency on animals, and at the same time, starting to do the research to make universe-wide extinction possible.
So are we going with plague? How are we going with that?
Are we going with what, sorry?
Plague, like we going like viral?
No. So the thing is, most of our mission is about prevention of life developing. So you can't do that with a plague. It's about understanding how life develops on other planets and how to prevent it.
Okay, so if you want to prevent it, you need something that enacts for generations, right? So you would need something that's microbial to prevent any life from resurfacing, right?
It depends. There's a few different aspects and possibilities. So we need to do the research and find out.
Okay, so based on the research that's on this site, whatever, pro extinction, what are your bullet points for making full extinction?
Yeah, so we need the most vast and thorough extinction possible. That's the important thing. The most vast and the most thorough.
Okay, so you're
That
just
means
saying broad terms. So
I'm
you
trying to
have to
explain.
have some form of idea.
Okay, we do have a rule. If you're just going to interrupt me while I'm answering your question for you, then you will be kicked off. Hello, how's it going?
Hey, what's going on, man? I was up here maybe like a week ago, but our convo had to get cut short, unfortunately. Um, but yeah, I have experience in first dipping my toes into antinatalism, being persuaded by that, moving on to ephilism from there. But I no longer adhere to those beliefs about the world. And I think my biggest contention with this idea that the goal should be to minimize suffering as much as possible is that it's contingent on entirely removing positive experience as well, which I think just kind of nullifies the whole thing,
Well, it's
because in
safety is more
a state
important,
of
right? It doesn't nullify it at all. A child not being abused is more important than anything else. So it doesn't nullify it at all. Some selfish person being happy is not as important as a child not being abused to death. That's obvious. That should be common sense. So yeah, safety comes first. Children not being abused comes first. It is more important than anything else.
Sure, but in the absence of consciousness, once the goal is reached, these conceptions of good and bad that we have constructed and that we adhere to for whatever reason it might be. I'm an atheist. I assume you are as well. We obviously do not have sort of the thing that
You don't
theists
need
have,
life
which
to
is that
exist to have good and bad.
you don't think that
No,
good and bad are contingent on
definitely
life.
not. Why would you
Okay.
force a child to be molested to death just so that you can say, "Oh, look, good and bad exists now. That's what matters more." That child not being molested to death matters more than your philosophy.
No, yeah. What I'm saying is that you just contradicted yourself because
Did I?
you're invoking a situation where life exists to
Yeah.
describe the bad.
What do you're not talking any sense. Look, it's obvious that a child being molested to death is a bad thing, and
Yes.
they don't need to experience that just so you can say, yeah, my philosophy is complete now, right? Your philosophy is not as important as their safety. Okay? So
Sure,
get that through your
you
head. Get
cannot
that through your
have you
head.
cannot have a being that never comes into existence definitionally cannot be safe or unsafe because it does not
Yeah,
exist.
they can. Of course they can. Of course they can. They
They
exist as
can?
potential. They exist as
They
potential.
exist as
Yeah.
potential.
Yeah.
Okay, so you think that you don't believe in you don't believe that the universe is deterministic then?
Look, if a woman is going to have a baby, right? You wouldn't kick her in the belly and say, "Well, your baby doesn't exist yet, so it can't be safe or not safe," right? That would just be ridiculous. That's basically what you're saying.
Before somebody
So let me get this straight.
before an egg is
You
fertilized.
can't understand the idea of having being better off not being born. Is that right? You think it's impossible to be better off by not being born? Is that what I'm
Yes,
understanding?
because you
So
cannot be
if
better off. There are
so,
no
what?
subjects
Okay,
in
but
that
if you get
situation.
sent to hell, right, you're better off just not existing.
Dude, again, you keep on referencing
Look, most people
better
say,
off
I would
as
rather
if
not
this
exist than be in
person.
hell, right?
Sure, but the thing
So
is
it's
that
as
you
simple as
exist
that. It's as
now.
simple as that. And, the fact that you can't understand it means that there's something wrong with your brain. Because it's really simple. Anyway, I've made loads of videos recently about these brain defects and, how they work. So you can go and check that out on my channel. Hello, how's it going?
It's going good. What a premise you've created. I love this premise. I've thought about this premise before.
Yeah.
It's such a good topic. Such a good topic. But here's the thing: what about people who enjoy suffering? Are you going to take that away from them?
Yeah, that's it's more important that no child gets abused than some random person be selfish and happy.
Oh, what a blanket statement! What a
Well,
I
yeah, yeah,
love you,
I would
dude.
say that the
You're
children
so
being
good at
abused take
this.
priority. The children
No,
being
that doesn't
abused.
take priority over me. I'm more important than another child than another person.
So your existence justifies infinite child abuse. Got it. Thank you for your opinion. Okay, let's get someone a bit smarter on, a bit more intelligent than that guy. Perhaps they'll be against child abuse if we're lucky. Hello, how's it going?
Hi, James. How are you this morning?
Good, thank you.
Or it may not be may not be this morning for you. Sorry.
3 p.m.
There we go. I was wondering. So I've been thinking about this because I have been watching your videos and have seen a couple of your lives, and I was wondering. The question for me that might be a key one is, what percentage of life do you think is having a net negative experience?
Oh, the vast majority, like over 99%.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So, okay. So are you saying like insects and birds and animals, like, and human beings, like you think that 99% of all of those are having a net negative experience?
Yeah, over 99.9% of life born onto this planet will die painfully as babies and children. So, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Okay, like, okay, thank you very much for your candor. I think I'm going to look into that and check. Is there anything else you wanted to say as to like which types of life are passing away painfully
All of
in
them, really. Most animals born into nature die painfully, and life existing on this planet and on other planets probably, it's about forcing life to not care about their children and to put them into incredible danger and incredible extreme suffering. So it's about forcing life to be stupid, to not care about others, to not care about suffering, to not care about endangering others. And that's why we live in such a crazy world, because this warping, this bubble that we live in, nature depends on it. Life wouldn't exist if we weren't stupidly forcing others into cruelty. So the smarter ones, they went out of existence, they went extinct. And so we've just a cycle of stupidity basically reinforcing itself, and the more and more stupid ones, they reproduce the most. So life is always going to be a bad thing. It's destined to be bad. It has to be bad to exist.
Right. So there was a lot of sort of triggering language that you used there, but I do thank you for your time. I'm going to look into that, and maybe I'll come up another time when I have a second question for you. But thanks for your time.
Thanks for coming on, and thanks for your time. Yeah, again, I've just been putting out loads of videos over the last couple of days about this kind of stuff, going into detail, going into depth. So maybe check them out. All right, let's get our next guest on. Pot plant, cool name. Hello.
Hello.
How's it going?
Lovely. Yourself?
Good, thank you.
So, just to set the terms, you think that complete extermination of all life or just human life?
All life.
And why is that?
Because safety from suffering is more important than anything that you can experience in life.
Of course, but you can come back from suffering. You can have a
Not
fulfilled
necessarily,
life
no.
after suffering.
No,
That's fine.
in most cases, no, you don't, actually.
In most cases, yes, but the example you brought up before was a child being abused, which is horrible and disgusting. I think we can all agree that shouldn't happen. But a lot of people
There's no,
that have,
in most cases, yes, but. There shouldn't be a but, because then you're
there
saying,
shouldn't be a but.
You're saying, yeah, most life gets tortured to death, but in most cases, yeah, but a few of them are lucky. You shouldn't be prioritizing the lucky ones over the majority getting tortured to death. It's completely upside down thinking. It's crazy thinking, and only nature can make you that crazy, and has done, because nature relies on stupidity for life to exist. Life wouldn't exist if it were rational.
Well, that's the thing. We aren't rational creatures, are we?
Well, most humans aren't, but there's now a new subspecies of humans developing that are rational, or at least they've gone past a threshold of rationality that allows them to go against suffering and against nature.
A subspecies of human. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so I've just put out a video on it, so you feel free to check it out. But But yeah, there's two types of humans. The first type is the most common type, and that is humans that are animalistic, and they are trapped in an animalistic way of thinking and they can't get out of it. So anything that gets them out of that is inhibited and suppressed by systems in the brain and keeps them dumb and unintelligent, basically, so that they will go on to reproduce. Reproduction, the system relied on an incredibly complex way to keep life dumb, basically.
So it's basically just a different level of thinking for humans, not a genetically difference.
Yeah, so there's a new type of humans developing, there's very few of them, and the difference is that they're able to escape nature's priorities, right? Nature's priorities are allowing unlimited amounts of suffering, allowing life to be tortured to death, allowing cruelty, and forcing all of this to continue. Whereas now there's a few humans that are finally waking up and realizing this is wrong and that we should put an end to it.
I do agree that completely eradicating suffering would be like the best thing to go off, but to do that you would have to genocide every single living species, and I think that
Well, it's not
that in
genocide,
itself
that's
would
the
be a
wrong
lot
word.
worse than the
Genocide's
few
the wrong
positive
word.
things. Sorry,
Yeah, so it's not genocide. We would use euthanasia, and it's definitely the better thing to do, the right thing to do. It provides immediate safety from suffering, it provides safety from a cruel death, a cruel life, and it provides safety to other life from being, forced into existence by reproduction.
It does, but it also provides safety from having a good life and a healthy life.
Yeah, but safety from a bad life is more important.
I suppose that I agree to an extent there, but my second question to you would be, if there's no life to exist and to experience, how can there be good or bad?
Well, there wouldn't need to be anything, but there would be a good, which is the absence of suffering and the absence of the possibility of suffering. So you don't need life to exist. You don't need an observer for something to be good.
You don't, but couldn't you also, sorry, to be clear, I'm agreeing with that point. Couldn't you also say that would be a bad because it's removing any possibility of good?
No, because again, removing the possibility of suffering is far more important. And you can't remove the possibility of suffering without removing the possibility of happiness. But safety is more important. And, unless you do this, then you're guaranteeing that children will be tortured to death just so that some selfish lucky ones can have fun at their expense.
I do see where you're coming from, but shouldn't the goal be to create a world where that doesn't exist, where everyone, which I know is borderline
No,
impossible,
because that's
but
not
shouldn't-
practical. It's not realistic, and it's not ethical either.
Well, I don't
if you're
think it's realistic or ethical to wipe out every living species.
Well, you say that, but then in the next breath, you're saying that we should, instead of end suffering with euthanasia, which exists, we should create magic, right? So you're the one suggesting that we do
magic. I'm
something.
saying we should put all our goals to try to better this world we have instead of
Right,
trying to
but that's unethical, right? That's unethical. If you're reducing slavery instead of ending slavery, then you're still supporting slavery.
Yes, but
So thank you for your support of slavery and suffering, but it's wrong. Do better, be better, right? Your ideology of forcing children to be tortured is not acceptable. Okay, let's get someone else on. Hello, how's it going?
So everything fine.
Good.
I believe that the ending of suffering can basically be required when it comes to mutual human understanding. When we have mutual human understanding of what we're doing wrong as a human species, we can all suffering because we can share resources equally, understanding ourselves or basically our humanity when it comes to like to our own, for example, powerness. For example, we're evil because we don't understand each other. We have to understand each other as human beings, being able to give us, for example, the benefit of the doubt, create relationships, friendships, and understanding when it comes to our own species, as when it comes to our emotions and needs, rather than trying to ignore each other. The reason as to why we're suffering so much is because we don't understand each other. We are not a family. We're not united. We are separated.
Wrong. The reason we're suffering so much is because of nature and because of existence. It's nothing to do with all of that nonsense about how we just need to be nicer to each other. That will achieve absolutely nothing. Just being nicer to each other won't do a goddamn thing, because you'll still have the majority of the population suffering in the worst conditions and extreme cruelty, which is wild animals being eaten alive. They're not going to benefit from you and your neighbor getting along better, right? So that's a selfish perspective, that's a cruel perspective, and an inconsiderate perspective. The idea that we can fix all of our problems just by being nicer and caring less about animals, no, we're not going to platform that. All right, the queue is currently pretty empty. We need more people requesting to join for debate. In the meantime, we're going to have Clint Eastwood, great actor. Hello, Clint.
Hi, James. How are you?
Good, thank you.
It's my fourth time here in the panel. I just want to ask some of my stupid questions. I've heard you talk about veganism, and I want you maybe to, if you can, to elaborate your position about veganism. And I'm not talking about vegans, I'm talking about veganism in principle. Do you think that veganism contradicts the cause of extinction, or you can be both, like pro-extinction and vegan?
You can't be both, because the thing is that veganism is about, if you've ever read the principles of veganism or read their definition of veganism, it actually says in the definition, just reduce suffering where convenient, basically. So within that definition, I did butcher it a bit, but within the actual definition, it says, yes, suffering is acceptable. We should just reduce it where practical and convenient. So even within their own definition, they're saying that suffering is acceptable. It's fine. So that's what veganism is. It's really not a good thing. It's just saying that farmed animals shouldn't be eaten alive. It doesn't care about anything else. It doesn't care about wild animals. It doesn't care about humans. It discriminates against everyone else, basically. So it's discrimination. That's a bad thing. A vegan world is going to still be forcing life into cruelty, still going to be a world of oppression and misery. So that's not a good thing. What we need is extinctionism, because that is the ultimate empathetical position. So if you're working towards the end of all suffering, then you are looking at the whole picture, you're looking at the big picture, you're looking at everything, you're considering everything, right? So we don't need veganism or anything else, or anti-racism. We need to be working towards the end of all suffering, because if you don't do that, then you're saying that suffering's acceptable, that suffering's acceptable, that child should get tortured, I don't care about that child. We have to care about all life and all suffering, and that's the only way to actually deal with it and to solve the problem in a way that makes sense and is fair and accounts for everything, considers everything. So yeah, I mean, in terms of, we should all be vegan eventually. Right now it causes more suffering to be vegan, but yes, we should work towards a world where we don't have to eat animals, obviously. But that's what we're already doing at the pro-extinction movement. That's already a part of our plan. Veganism is just one small part of it, which again is the problem with all of these movements. They all focus on one small thing, one small group, one type of suffering. We need to focus on all suffering and the whole picture.
So I understand what you're saying, I think that like most vegans that I've tried to be vegan for a few times, but didn't manage to do that. But I think that most what vegan trying to do is to reduce the exploitation of farm animals and maybe other animals. But don't you you think on principle that if we will stop eating meat right now, everyone all together, wouldn't it reduce the amount of suffering? Because right now there are trillions or billions or trillions of animal in farms. So, like, if we will stop eating meat, how can you explain to me how it will increase the suffering?
Yeah, because there's so much in our world and our industries which is non-vegan, right? If you chop down a rainforest, you're doing something non-vegan. If you open a mining operation, if you open a factory, if you build a house, if you build a city, you're doing something non-vegan because that directly kills animals, right? So the amount of land. So in a vegan world, right, there would be just incredible amounts of land not being used, right, being used by wild animals. So veganism supports wild animal suffering because it supports a natural world. It's like an environmentalist message in that sense. So you've got all of the other industries which veganism wouldn't allow, which these industries prevent suffering. And then you've got farmed animal industries, right? So farming meat, creating animals for their meat. That uses an incredible amount of space. It uses at least 5 times the amount of space that vegan food uses. So that's 5 times the amount of space that we're denying to wild animal suffering. So if we didn't have a meat industry right now, we would have more rainforest, we would have more wild land being used for reproduction and causing suffering. And also the suffering that wild animals experience is worse than that which farmed animals experience. So in every way, shape and form, veganism is a bad thing at the minute, right? If it weren't the case that wild animals were suffering as a result of veganism, then I would support veganism. But the thing is that as vegans aren't caring about all suffering, they're not trying to responsibly think about the bigger picture, the whole picture. That's why they are irresponsibly and thoughtlessly causing more suffering. It's because they're only focusing on one thing. So they're ignoring everything else that happens and the consequences of their actions.
So, if I understand you right, you're saying that that veganism, even though their cause is to try to eliminate it, if we do the math, at the end, it reduces the suffering if we continue to eat meat. So, I understand you right?
That's right. We have done the maths on
do I
this.
have
We
another
have done the
question?
research on this. We've looked into it properly, and
Yeah.
yes, eating meat causes less suffering. In particular, beef.
So, do I have time for another question that bothers me?
Yeah, sure.
So, let's say that the movement grows and grows, and more people starting to understand and embrace the principles of pro-extinctions, but then, like, part of humanity starting to oppose it because they are programmed and so on, and like they think differently than the pro-extinction movement, and then maybe you can see in the future theoretically that maybe a war will start between these two groups. Like, do you think it's possible that like it will get to the point of violence between us, like the parts of people that wants everything to extinct and the parts that is pro-life? We can take this scenario with even alien life, that maybe we'll come to another planet and we will tell them that we want to exterminate them, and they will do everything in order to fight us. And this will cause war and suffering and so on. So is that a possible scenario that you think is possible? And what do you think about it?
Yeah, it's pretty simple, really. We would try to avoid that, but yeah, it's very possible, and it may be necessary. To end slavery in America, they had to have a war. So, yeah, sometimes you do have to use force in order to defend others.
So basically, okay, you answered all my questions. So
But
I'll guess I'll see you.
it's not guaranteed that there will be a war, right? We can't say
Yeah,
for
yeah, yeah,
definite
of course.
that there'll be a war. There might be
Yeah,
other
of
ways
course.
to do it, better ways to do it, right? So that's what we're going to prioritize. And actually, violence and war, it's kind of a primitive thing. It's an unintelligent thing. We like to, use our intelligence to solve these problems. Now, if we have to use war, we will. But I would say that we should, stay confident and optimistic that there's a better way to do it.
Yeah, it's just like when I try to look at the logistics, all these problems pops up. Like, what if this gonna happen? What if this is going to happen? And I'm trying to solve it in my head. But you are better than explaining that. You did more research and you did
Yeah, look, there's lots of possibilities of things that could go wrong or bad things that could happen, but what matters is that we still try, and we still try to grow the movement, try to get new activists into the movement. That's going to give us the better chances of success, of actually carrying out the end of suffering. So we need to get as many people into the movement as possible, and that's all that really matters right now.
Yeah. All right, James, thank you. I'm gonna let you continue with more guests. So thank you.
Thank you for coming on,
Good
Clint.
luck.
I appreciate you as always. All right, let's move on to our next guest. We have Jupremacy. Hello.
Oh man, I didn't mean to request up. Actually,
Yeah.
I don't know how that happened. I didn't hit join. I thought it would go away, but I'm just
That's
listening,
okay.
man.
Do you have any questions?
Have you seen the movie Age of Ultron? The Marvel movie, the Marvel series #2.
Yeah.
Did you get this ideology from Ultron? Remember, the Ultron wanted to do the same thing, and then Vision was created. He was the bad guy in the movie.
Yeah, it's not the exact same thing, really, but I understand. But no, that's not where we got the idea from. It's simply logic and rationality that led us to this. I didn't start the movement, by the way. Someone else did a few years ago. I only joined last year.
What is the difference between this ideology and the ideology of Ultron in the movie?
Yeah, well, I don't really know about Ultron, to be honest with you, but I can tell you what our ideology is, and that is the most vast and thorough prevention of life possible and prevention of suffering possible. So Ultron wasn't trying to do that. He wasn't trying to research the limits of what's possible and what we can achieve, and can we get to other planets? Can we stop the universe itself from ever coming back and existing again and causing more suffering? What are the limits? So the thing is, you really have to be anti-suffering. You have to be focused on prevention of suffering to be aligned with us, because no one else is. People keep comparing us to the Nazis, right? But the Nazis weren't trying to end all suffering. They weren't doing it for compassionate reasons. And Ultron, equally, probably not doing it for the best reasons.
He was. You'll have to watch the movie again. So it's the motive that matters, right? Not the end result. Because if this goes through, the end result would be the end of all life. What about the last group of 100? And their job is to take out all of each other, and they just change their mind. And they say, no, we can rule the world now. How will you keep people with bad motives from getting into the movement? Because you're saying it's the motive that matters. If you want to end all life, to end all suffering, then that's good. But if somebody wanted to end all life because they're evil, then that would be bad. So that's a fine line.
Well, at the minute, we have a pretty good filter process. We have a pretty good process for filtering out bad people at the minute. Actually, to try and fake being an extinctionist is quite difficult, because people are so warped away from the actual logic of it that they can't even try to imagine it. And so they struggle to even act and pretend to be an extinctionist because it's so
Well, you
far
want it
from
to
their own
grow, right?
nature.
But you want it to grow, and
you know,
eventually it's going to be worldwide, right?
yeah, you know, if we have to come up with a system that ensures that no one's going to betray us or something, then yeah, that's what we'll do.
I'm not talking about betraying. I'm saying that people in the movement in the future, if there's hundreds of thousands of people in the movement, what about the ones with the motive that's not as pure as yours? Will it still mean that the movement is a good thing? If it weighs on the motive, then if the motive shifts, but would you agree if the motive,
what do you mean by the motive?
The motive, if it was to shift, if the motive changed, like it started off, I want to end all suffering, and then some real powerful people got a hold of the movement and they lied and said, yes, we want to end all suffering also, but they actually had a secret motive that wasn't as pure as that.
I don't think that's likely to happen, to be honest with you.
It's happened all throughout history. People start movements, and then the wealthy, greedy, manipulative people, they hijack them and turn them into things that are not good.
The thing is that they've all relied on irrationality and discrimination, whereas our movement is fully rational, and so we can actually easily tell who's being rational and who's not being rational. It's quite easy for us.
Are you going to oversee?
So if I'm saying that if there was some sort of split or divide, then yeah, there would just be one irrational group and one rational group. The rational people would go to the rational one.
Then it'd be two groups of people pointing at each other and saying, he's the fake extinctionist. I mean, it's reality. That's what happens. Groups split. There will be people who want to join this movement because they're sad or they got abused as a child.
That's not a reason not to do it, though, right? You could just spend all day finding silly excuses not to end all suffering.
I'm asking, is the motive the one thing that makes it correct? Because the end result will be ending all life. And that sounds bad to everyone until you tell them, well, it's because I want to end suffering. So your whole movement really weighs on the motive of the movement. So if the motive were to shift, then your movement would no longer be justified.
Well, there's no real reason to think that the motive is going to shift. Really not sure what you were talking about, to be honest with you. I mean, look, if a problem happens, then we'll just try and solve it. Like, it's as simple as that. Like, what do you mean the motive is going to shift? From what? I mean, the point is to end all suffering and to do it in the most thorough way possible. So that means that, you know, if we've got a button that's going to end the entire world, we wouldn't push it, okay? Because we have to hold ourselves to the highest standards of certainty and thoroughness, right? So, yeah, I don't know what to tell you, but it's a rational movement, and the idea that we're going to have some sort of, you know, monkey fight or something, I don't think it's going to happen. And I think that anyone in the movement is going to understand the rationality. And, you know, we can debate people. We can have that argument out with them. And yeah, okay, maybe it would get to the point where there's, you know, more than one group and the followers aren't sure which leader to follow. Who knows? But realistically, the smarter person would hopefully win. And, you know, again, you could think about these hypotheticals all day long and just come up with infinite, you know, excuses not to try and end all suffering. But that's all it is. It's excuses. Yes, I did get a haircut. Thank you. So yeah, it's just excuses. You're not looking for the ways that it could go right. You're looking for the ways that it could go wrong. So, you know, that kind of thinking is basically bound on pessimism towards the idea of ending all suffering, which is a trick of nature, basically. It's saying, don't try to end nature. So nature has tricked you into not ending nature, basically. We should end nature. Absolutely. All right, the queue is completely empty. If somebody wants to join, now's your chance. Let's get some more interesting conversations going. If you have questions about the movement, about the ideology, Now's your chance to ask them. The button's right here. So, getting back to it, we've got two types of humans in this world, and it seems at the minute like there's really no way to convert the majority of humans into extinctionists. Now, we can still work on ways to try and achieve it, but the inhibition, the control of nature over their brains is too powerful at the minute. We've not found a way to actually cure them, basically, using logic. Now, there might be a way to do that, and we are looking into curing them using logic, but for now, we kind of are operating on the basis that it's not possible. So on that basis, it means that there's only a very small amount of humans in the world who can join the movement, who will be motivated to join the movement, and who won't be controlled by nature into thinking that suffering's okay. And so that is what we're doing. We are basically doing activism, making videos on the understanding that a tiny, tiny, tiny number of people will actually do what we want and join the movement. So it could be quite literally something along the lines of one person will join, one suitable person will join for every, 200,000 views that we get. It could be as high as every million views that we get. Going off of my experience in the movement and, knowing about our views and knowing about our membership count, I would say that it is somewhere between 100,000 to 500,000 views. That's what it takes to get one suitable person join the movement. So it's very difficult. It's like penning for gold. It's not helped by the fact that not many people are interested in watching our videos in the first place. But we do believe that there's going to be lots more people out there who would be open to joining the movement, who just haven't heard about it yet. And all they need is to hear about it, and they say, yes, the end of all suffering, I love nothing more, I want to do it, how can I help? But there's few of them out there. We just got to keep making videos and streaming until we get them. So, James, what inspired you to join the movement? It's a great question. I love telling this story. So, in 2019, I tried to make my own movement to make a world with utopia, to end all wars, to have world peace, but nobody was interested. And I understand now that it's because nature controls people's minds into being stupid and doing the wrong thing. Why else would people resist quite literally working towards a perfect world? So I gave up on it for a while, not fully understanding why there was so much resistance. And then last year, the movement contacted me on Reddit and invited me to join. And, they basically just had to say, yeah, we're working to end all suffering. And I was like, sign me up. How do I help? When they explained that, they were working to make sure nobody was forced into a life of hell ever again, I was like, yeah, let's do it. I couldn't agree more. That's the right thing to do, the best thing to do. Let's do it. So, we are gathering the small group of humans who will actually support ending suffering. Part of what we might be doing is reproducing ourselves, donating sperm to that end as well. And it might take a very, very long time. It could take hundreds of years, thousands of years for us to have victory and to take over the world and start putting an end to suffering. So we're in the hardest position, and that's because we're as against nature as possible. So we're against the system. The system's not going to create people against itself. We are the exceptions to that, the rare exceptions, the mutations even. You could call us mutants. So yeah, we really are just trying to find that small group of people who's going to join the project and help us fight to change the world and end all suffering. Very difficult to do that, but that's what we're doing, basically. That's the point of all of this activism, is to just gather those who will join the activism. And the more people we get, while we're still doing activism to ask people to join, the more people we have, the more time and the more resources we'll have to start working on other projects, like, okay, how can we take over the world? We, instead of just simply asking people to join the cause, we'll actually be able to start really focusing on actually working on the plans to take over the world and cause extinction. Again, it could be 1,000-year-long project or more. So it's going to be very strategic. There's going to be a lot of thought put into it. But yeah, that's what we're doing. How else are you going to end all suffering? You have to start a movement. You have to get people to join and work on the project together. You have to take over the world, and then you have to start doing it. There's no other way to do it. People say we should release a virus or something stupid like that. That's not going to achieve anything. And the majority of our mission is helping life on other planets and the rest of the universe. It even includes seeing if, there's going to be other universes that we can try and prevent. Or other life, right? Other dimensions, who knows, right? I'm not saying that we believe in other dimensions, but it's just about taking it as far as we can, up until the point that it seems no longer rational to do any more. So, if we've got research saying, right, this is the maximum we can do to prevent suffering, we're going to check those findings, check that it really is the maximum that we can do, but there would be no point going beyond what's rational to think is the most that we can do. So I'm not saying that we should just keep trying to do research even when it seems illogical to do so, right? It really is just rationally doing what makes sense to do, doing as much as we can to help others, and in a rational way, a practical way. And just think how many are relying on us to do this. Trillions and trillions. Really, the word trillion doesn't actually begin to account for how many life forms need extinction and need to be safe from suffering. The true number of potential victims that we could actually help if we stopped the entire universe, it's an insanely big number, perhaps incalculable. The number of zeros at the end is like hundreds of zeros, basically. It's a ridiculously big number. And the vast majority of them will benefit from extinction, because the vast majority of these life forms throughout the universe will be animals suffering in nature, in the worst conditions possible. They'll be freezing to death. They'll be starving to death. They'll be getting diseases, parasites. They'll be running for their life all day, and they'll be eaten alive. So the worst things possible. And nature will make that suffering feel intense and horrible, because that will push the life to try and survive and reproduce. So it really is just a big torture device that we live in. We effectively live in hell, and making sure that no other life is, forced to exist and suffer in hell is the right thing to do. It's the only moral thing to do. And that is the best way to understand it, really. That we don't live in a world of equal opportunity where every life is a good thing. It's quite the opposite, where every life is a bad thing because they're at risk of insane levels of suffering and torture, to be at risk of being trapped in lives of hell and begging for death. So it's effectively hell, and we should make sure that no one else gets sent to hell. Like, it should be obvious. Forcing life to exist in cruel conditions and extreme suffering, it's the worst thing that you could possibly do. I dare you to name something worse. I don't think you can, right? Forcing a child to exist in a dungeon to be molested to death. But, that is basically happening en masse. Animals are being forced to exist in nature, and these babies are dying within the first few days in the majority of cases. So you've got like birds being born, and then predators will come up and just start eating them alive, eating their family alive while they're watching. And it's like, yeah, you're next. I'm going to start with your eyes. I'm going to rip those out while you're still watching. Then I'm going to eat your intestines while you're alive. And all the while, you're going to be screaming in the most pain imaginable. So that is literally what happens to the majority of life born, not just on this planet, but in this universe. The worst things possible, because this world is just too dangerous and cruel. It's insanely dangerous and cruel. And that's why you have so many baby animals and, you know, humans as well, if you go back in time, dying in infancy, because the world is too dangerous for these infants to survive. So you have to force loads and loads and loads of them. You have to give birth to loads just for a small minority to be lucky enough to survive. And it will be the most selfish ones that survive. You know, think about it. Like, if you've got a few baby birds and one is really selfish, then that's going to be the one that survives, right? So cruelty is baked into existence and life, and any life that you find on other planets is going to have probably a very similar story to us, where cruelty and selfishness is reinforced, it's rewarded, and empathy and kindness is quite literally made extinct by the cycle of reproduction. So yeah, basically we live in the worst world possible, and the only good thing we can do is prevent others being forced into the worst world possible and the worst suffering possible. Even if it was a minority that was going to suffer, that would still be wrong and cruel. And the reason for that is that suffering and extreme suffering is far too terrible to allow. If you actually understand it and just the depths of its extremity and how incredibly bad it is, then you would understand that there's nothing that can justify that, and that there's nothing more important than providing safety from it. You know, being trapped in hell, you wouldn't want that. And I'm sure, you know, if you could think about it this way, if you could roll a dice that says like, right, let's say that there's a life form, it doesn't exist yet, it's just in potential, and you could roll a dice where it's got a 50% chance of being forced to exist and being sent to hell or to heaven, right? I would say it would be incredibly evil to roll that dice and, you know, to force something that doesn't exist into the danger of going to hell and to suffer terribly, right? So safety from hell, safety from suffering is far more important than access to pleasures in danger, right? So safety comes first, and in a world where we can be trapped in hell, in the real world, right? You know, many people are trapped in lives of depression and what is effectively hell, or diseases, chronic pain. So safety from that is paramount, and quite literally nothing is more important. Okay, let's get our next guest. Hello.
Yes, I am pro suffering. So I completely disagree with your statement.
So you're pro child abuse, okay? So why?
Everything hey, pain is weakness leaving the body. Like, there's a reason that the military has to learn that. It's good for people to suffer. They learn from it.
So you think children being molested is actually a good thing?
If they learn from it, you know, as long as they don't die, you know, in the long run, it'll help them out.
So you would actually encourage people to molest children because it's better
No,
for them?
I wouldn't encourage that. There's other ways that kids are going to suffer anyways. You kind of want to give them a little bit of time to enjoy life. That way, the suffering that kicks in later is actually a lot more useful to them learning. Without their brain being developed to a certain point, it kind of ruins them. You know, they might start enjoying it a little too much. So you got to like let them enjoy life for a while. When they become an adult, suffering kicks in. That's when you really teach people.
So they should get raped when they're a bit older.
Ideally, you know.
Ideally, okay, great. So
yeah.
So that's the crazy kind of mentality that nature will make people have, right? So they will literally say, yeah, child abuse is a good thing. Children being molested benefit from it. You know, the most insane things possible. Nature will make you say them. Again, so you have like nature, which is abusing children, forcing them to exist in very cruel conditions. And then you have people like that guy saying, yeah, child abuse is a good thing. Children existing in terrible conditions is a good thing. It should be very clear that they are the same position. So the stupid people, they parrot the position of nature, which is suffering is good. Children should suffer. Yes, let's keep the child abuse going. Why? Well, that's because that's how reproduction works. Reproduction relies on forcing children to exist and forcing them to exist in cruel conditions. Like, that is quite literally all there is to it. And so what you get out of that is stupid people like that guy, who have basically been brain damaged by nature into thinking that suffering's a good thing. Child abuse is obviously a bad thing, but nature thrives on it, and so it's tricked people like that guy into thinking that child abuse is a good thing. So we quite literally have like a system of chaos that thrives on suffering and evil things like that, and has enslaved humanity into agreeing with it, because that's how reproduction works. That's how evolution works. Whatever supports reproduction gets reinforced, becomes the norm, right? So stupidity supports reproduction, cruelty supports reproduction, inconsiderate, perspectives of not caring what happens to your kid, that supports reproduction. Reproduction wouldn't exist if people said, there's a chance my kid will have a bad life, so I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to put them into that risk and that incredible danger. So life wouldn't exist without life being stupid and putting other life into unacceptably, absurdly dangerous conditions and extreme cruelty and suffering. So nature relies on upside down thinking, essentially. It tricks us into agreeing with these stupid positions, these cruel positions, because nature is cruel, right? So nature has tricked people into being cruel to support nature, to support reproduction. And this all happens because of the process of reproduction, where kindness is bred out of existence, and cruelty and selfishness is bred into it. So within that cruelty of reproduction, the more cruel, the more selfish you are, the more successful you're going to be, the more you're going to reproduce. If you're in a nest with 5 other baby birds and you're like kicking them out, you're stealing their food, they're going to die, and you're going to live, and you're going to be the one to get to reproduce. So we literally have a system where it's survival of the cruelest, survival of the most selfish, survival of the most evil, and survival of the most suffering enabling. James, do you like philosophy? No, actually, most people in our movement hate philosophy. And the reason for that is that philosophy is it's another system of nature and a deception by nature. So, we've got these brains, we want to think, we like thinking, some people like thinking. And so all of that thought and all of that energy, that mental energy, has gone into complete nonsense. So most philosophy is nonsense because it's not suffering focused, and so it's focusing on completely unimportant, unintelligent things. If you read a philosophy book, you're probably going to be in awe. Some people might be in awe and, wow, this is so complex. But actually, intelligent people reading a philosophy book, they say, wow, this is really stupid. What an incredible waste of time. Because it really is just mental masturbation. So it's mental masturbation. Suffering-focused ethics is the opposite of that. It's how can we improve life? How can we actually help people, instead of how can we think about the world in an incredibly useless way? That's what philosophy is. It's useless, it's thinking for fun, and it doesn't actually help the world. I do love philosophy. Like, I love the principle, the idea of philosophy, but actually, I went to school and I studied philosophy in a class for a year, and I was amazed at how useless and boring it was, right? I thought it would be interesting, but it wasn't. It's incredibly boring, incredibly useless, and incredibly irrelevant. So if you want real philosophy, then you should explore extinctionism and explore the ethics and the logic and morality of suffering and what we should do about it. That's actually interesting. That's actually interesting philosophy because it's real world philosophy. It applies to real life, and it actually guides how we deal with suffering and how we should work towards ending it. So, yeah. All right, the queue is currently empty. There is nobody requesting to join, like literally no one. So if you want to have a chat, if you've got questions, now's the time to join that queue. All right, somebody joined and then left. All right, so in the meantime, while we're waiting for people to join the queue to speak with me live, let's take some questions. Isn't philosophy also the thing that can make us come to your conclusions? No. People really have this misconception that you can hear enough or learn enough or be explained enough, read enough about extinction, and that you'll understand it. But actually, it's not about access to the information, it's about your brain biology and whether or not your brain is too animalistic to understand it. So again, nature has developed our brains in a way that we cannot think outside of what allows nature. So nature is about allowing suffering, and it's about forcing life into suffering and cruelty. The opposite of that is to end all suffering and to not allow life to be forced into cruelty and dangerous conditions. So, hang on, where was I? So yeah, the thing is that it depends on your brain biology. If you're lucky enough to be born with a good enough brain to be able to understand things like why suffering is bad, why children shouldn't be molested, but most people can't understand that. So it's my theory is that as society and technology has gotten more developed, our intelligence has gotten more developed, and actually the competition between intelligence has gotten more developed as well. And actually, I think that things like shorts on YouTube, YouTube Shorts, TikTok Shorts, it's actually the attention span is getting shorter, but I think that's because the competition for intelligence is getting higher. So as society gets more developed, advanced technologically, it becomes more intelligent. The world, society, the culture does become more intelligent as well. But most of it is still stupid, and we've only got a very small number of intelligent people at the minute. So yeah, brain intelligence is a really big thing. It really does matter a lot. So the idea that all humans are equal is a myth. It's completely wrong. We have a spectrum of intelligence, and that's kind of the most important thing. And so those who have developed enough intelligence, they are breaking out of nature's priorities. They're breaking out of nature's brainwashing, which has tricked everyone into thinking that, child abuse is acceptable and, horrible suffering is acceptable. When obviously child abuse is a bad thing, but, you got that, like the other guest saying, it's a good thing. You've direct proof and evidence, right, that nature has made people stupid and relies on people being stupid because otherwise they wouldn't reproduce. So we've got very few people capable of doing anything about this, or with a brains capable of doing anything about it. But we need to get more of them together. It's possible that there's going to be loads of extinctionists over the next few decades. Maybe it's really is a turning point for humanity. We don't know. It might be that 10 years from now the movement's massive. It could become the mainstream position. Who knows? Things are changing, and that's kind of the excitement of it, is not knowing. Kitsune, if you've got questions, then request to join. I'll see if I can invite you on. No, I can't. You should have a button here to request to join. If you don't, I don't know what's gone wrong. All right, let's get our last guest back on. Because there's no one else. Hello again.
I really think you're underestimating how, like, you're talking about intelligent people and the new evolution. How do you think that came about? Suffering forces people to become smarter. I just think you haven't really gotten smart enough yet to realize that suffering's good for you.
So suffering's not good for you because, a child being molested to death is definitely a bad thing for them. Babies being eaten alive, definitely a bad thing for them. They don't benefit from that, right? So that suffering isn't doing any good.
I think as a whole, though, like existence starts to get better because of the suffering.
For
All those
who?
things
For
are
who? For who?
horrible.
For who?
All those things are horrible.
But for
Well,
who?
for the
Who does it
people,
get better for?
for the survivors, obviously.
Yes, for the minority who are benefiting from all of this suffering. So it's like that's a form of oppression, right?
No, I mean it's natural though. I
Yeah,
don't
but
know why
that doesn't make it
you're
okay.
fighting
That
nature.
doesn't make it
I don't know
okay.
why you're fighting nature this
But
hard.
that's like someone raping a woman and saying, "Oh, but it's natural," right? You using "oh, it's natural" is a way to defend disgusting and unacceptable behaviors.
Well, I see your point there, but I don't agree with you.
Right, and I appreciate that. And as I've explained, people are too unintelligent to agree. So what that means is that their intelligence is actually capped, it's limited, and it's suppressed. If without this form of suppression, you would be able to explain things that are logical to people, and they would say, "Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, children being abused is a bad thing." Um, obviously. But because we have something in the brain called the inhibitor, it actually prevents intelligent thoughts and rational thoughts. It keeps us animalistic because that's what leads to more reproduction. So no, they were dead wrong. All of this doesn't lead to more intelligence. It leads to less intelligence, basically. But yeah, so you kind of have a system of forcing life into cruelty, and making that life force others into cruelty, stupidly, right? You have to be stupid to do that. So it relies on limiting intelligence and making us more stupid. That is like one of the most important things for evolution and for reproduction and survival of a species. It has to be made to be stupid, like on purpose, basically. Well, obviously nature doesn't think and do things on purpose, but if it did, and we can talk about it like that way to understand it, then yeah, it relies on making people stupid. So that's a bad thing. It relies on making people agree with suffering and think that child abuse is a good thing. Absolutely crazy. So that's animalistic, it's unintelligent, and we need to work against it. Problem is that you can tell people these things, you can explain it to them perfectly, and you can even get them to agree with it. Most people that come on here that get kicked off or whatever, if we really wanted to force them to admit that we're correct, we could do it, right? To achieve that, you kind of have to trap them in like a long form debate, an hour long debate, 2 hour long debate or something. And then you have to just obliterate all of their nonsense, nature-given talking points, basically. And if you don't believe me, you can watch us do it. We've done it many, many times, me and Steve and other activists. Search Pro Extinction on YouTube, go to the YouTube channel, go to the live section. You can see our podcast. Me and Steve have got a 25-episode podcast on there. But we also do live debates on YouTube, and most of them are long. 1 hour debates, 2 hour debates against one person, so the same person. And pretty much unanimously, they all kind of fold and will say, okay, yeah, you're right. But then they'll say cringe things like, but I don't care. It's got nothing to do with me. And it's like, ew, cringe. So they'll all do that, and we can make them do that. It's just kind of cringe. But all of these humans who are under the thumb of nature, controlled by nature, they all hold ridiculous positions like child abuse is a good thing. And yeah, you have to push them on it. You have to debate them to death, basically, and exhaust all of these defense mechanisms. So in a way, nature has like a massive defense mechanism against rationality. And we can start chipping away at it, chipping away, but there's still all of this bullshit and nonsense and stupid opinions to get through. Now, we can destroy all of them and work away at it, but you'll get to a point where, and I've done this many times with these humans, they'll get to a point where they say, okay, you're right, but I still just can't get on board with it. Or they'll say things like, I still disagree. I don't know why. I can't tell you the exact reason. I can't put it into words, but I still disagree. So, that should be a red flag to them. They should be thinking, wow, I'm disagreeing with something correct. There's something really wrong with me. That should be what you'd think. But people don't, because they're prevented from doing so. They're prevented from being intelligent by the inhibitor, which is nature's way of keeping us stupid and keeping us reproducing. I've gone into incredible detail on this. Well, not incredible detail, but I've gone into detail on this on my last video. I've just published a 11 or 12 minute video on this on my TikTok channel, so go and check that out. And I explain it, and I can go into more depth and more detail, and maybe I should, and maybe I will, because actually the inhibitor, which makes humanity stupid, it is a fascinating topic, and it's important to understand it in order to understand what's going on in our world, and why it is the way it is. However, I would say that a lot of our activists in our movement have barely even heard of the inhibitor. Maybe they've never heard of it. Maybe I've never explained it to them. They don't actually need to know about it in order to know that suffering is bad and wrong and that we should work towards the end of all suffering. It's kind of like an upgrade to the understanding in that sense, I guess. But that's what I was talking about earlier when I was saying that the philosophy of extinctionism is vast. The science on it is vast. It's really interesting, and I think it's it is the most interesting thing, and it's the right thing to do. Why would you want a world where we're doing anything else other than using our science and technology to help others and to end suffering? That's the most exciting thing we could do. And part of that actually involves understanding life on a deeper level than we do now, because part of the human brain is essentially lobotomized right now, to where we don't understand empathy, we don't have true empathy. And so that actually prevents us from understanding a large portion of reality. It makes us essentially blind to suffering and not able to understand it. So that means that part of our understanding of reality is directly under attack. And that creates irrationality, that creates stupidity, it creates inconsistency, moral inconsistency. It makes people say crazy things that you explain to them how it's crazy, but they'll still say crazy things. So humans have been made to be irrational. That is kind of one of the most impressive things that nature has ever done. And I guess that as our brains got more complex, the sort of defense against intelligence had to develop as well. So, the inhibitor had to get more complex as our intelligence got more complex. And now, so you had like unintelligent animals reproducing, and evolution made it more competitive to where they had to be more intelligent because the more intelligent ones were more successful. And then eventually you got humans, you got intelligence starting to form, and you've gotten to the point where the limits of nature are now being exposed. So this entire time, the entire history of Earth, nature has managed to keep a lid on suffering and keeping it going. But for the very first time, there is actually now a threat to nature from within itself, which is life getting intelligent enough to start understanding that suffering is wrong and that nature is wrong and that we should end it. So that's pretty amazing, I think. It's an incredible story in that sense. Essentially, nature defeats itself by accident. It relies on making life stupid, but at the same time, there's competition, so it has to get more intelligent. And that sort of, as it gets more intelligent, as we got closer to being humans and having human brains and being intelligent, as life got more intelligent, it also had to get more hypocritical, basically. So we can say, punching a baby in the face is a bad thing. You shouldn't do it. But then we can turn around and say, forcing a baby to exist and to then be tortured to death, that's acceptable. So that's absolute hypocrisy, it's absolute paradox, absolute contradiction. And that hypocrisy of saying that, yeah, forcing children to be tortured to death and child abuse and all this horrible stuff is acceptable, that has reached its limit, okay? So monkeys and stupid humans, they can maintain that hypocrisy, right? And they have done all the way up until the 21st century, to where now it's getting too competitive. You've got technology, you've got artificial intelligence. The world is getting too intelligent to continue maintaining such incredibly stupid hypocrisy. So we've finally gotten to that point where we're getting out of it, and we've got humans who are no longer supporting the continuation of suffering, but are finally doing the opposite and saying we should end suffering. So that really is what the story is about. It's pretty amazing if you ask me. And that's what we are uncovering at the pro-extinction movement. We are uncovering the true history of the planet, the true history of life, and the true way to understand it and to see it. And that's all an important part of our journey to understand suffering better, how to deal with it, and how to solve it, basically. So I've got time for one more guest, just one more, and then I'm going to go for the day. So if someone else wants to join now, have a debate, have a discussion, ask me some questions, give your opinion, give a story, now's the time to do it. There's no one in the queue, so whoever joins first is probably going to get to come up and talk. In the meantime, I'm just going to have to keep talking. What else is there to do? We've got no guests. Oh, yeah, we've got one. We've got one. Okay, we've got Jake Deavy joining us. Let's hear their interesting opinions. Hello, Jake.
Hello. Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you.
So, I've been watching you on YouTube for a while. I'm just wondering, what's the difference between you and Efilism?
Oh, this is one of my favorite questions. Someone asked me yesterday. So, Efilism is it's kind of like the less developed version of extinctionism. If you've ever heard of Arthur Schopenhauer, I think it is, he's kind of a lot of people call him the first extinctionist, right? But then you've got David Benatar, and so these people throughout history have kind of almost gotten to the point where they're defeating nature, but they haven't quite gotten there. So they're still under the control of nature. The reason for that is that they didn't develop a movement to end nature. So that is what nature is preventing people from doing. That's why people keep saying, oh, it's unrealistic. It's making them not go against nature. But Ethelists are still under the control of nature. They haven't escaped it. Now, you could say that they are like an evolutionary stepping stone to full extinctionism. But unfortunately for Ethelists, they don't quite make it. They're basically like Neanderthals compared to humans in that sense. They haven't fully made it. They got to the finishing line but didn't cross it, essentially. And the reason for that is that Ethelists are against activism. They're against actually, practicing what they preach and working to end all suffering. They are antinatalist, which is bad for extinction. They're against the end of all suffering, and usually they only care about human suffering, and they don't care about animal suffering. They support irrational positions, such as, we actually debated the founder of Ephilism, Gary and Mendham. I debated him.
Saw that.
And, he came out with all of these illogical things like, the privileged should decide as a democracy, and suffering should continue, child abuse should continue until the privileged people decide otherwise. He said that if we have a way to end suffering now, we shouldn't do it, because in his words, we should have a graceful exit for the oppressors, basically. So Ephilism, it doesn't make sense. It's irrational, and it really is like the underdeveloped version of extinctionism.
Yeah, I see what you mean. It's like almost there, but
Yeah.
not quite at the finish line.
Yeah, and human history has been a story of getting closer and closer to that. As I was just explaining, you know, animals started out stupid. Finally, you started getting monkeys. They're a bit smarter. Humans are a lot smarter, right? Then you start getting ethicists. You start getting people that realize that all this suffering is wrong. But it's only when you get extinctionists who are doing activism to actually take that final step that you can really say that you've reached the end of that cycle of evolution, because they're not doing anything about it. They're saying we shouldn't do anything about it. So that supports nature. They're still brainwashed by nature to fully evolved out of that natural, horrible way of thinking. You have to say, yes, we should end suffering, and I'm going to help do it.
Yeah, so this is just like the very end goal of like all ethical, standpoints.
Yeah, because the thing is that a world with total safety from extreme suffering, total safety from being trapped in a life of hell, means a world with no life and no possibility of life. If you have the possibility of life existing then and developing, then you have the possibility of extreme suffering. So there's no world in which we're not prioritizing the prevention of life, where we're actually being fair and doing the right thing. Because unless you're actively preventing as much life as possible from existing and developing, then by default you are guaranteeing and allowing the worst suffering possible.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I guess I was a former F-list since like 2019 as well. And you're right, kind of just, I don't know, it tells you about extinction, but that's about it. There's no activism involved or anything.
Yeah, I mean, I
Really.
tried to join an Ephelis Discord server a few months ago, and I couldn't have been more disappointed. There was only one person talking there, and they were saying we shouldn't do activism, and that they were going to destroy the world by themselves. So a crazy person, basically.
Yeah,
They-
I was on the subreddit until it got taken down for you know what, but yeah, this is a new movement, right? I guess I just saw it a few months ago on my YouTube.
Yeah, the movement started 3 years ago. I joined the movement about 1 year ago. It was created by a guy in India, and he's still doing activism. And if you want to talk to him or see him, you can see his YouTube channel. I'm on his YouTube channel as well. If you search Pro Extinction on YouTube, you'll find it. On the live section, we have like 25 episodes of me and Steve doing an Extinction podcast. You can also find that same podcast with audio only on all major platforms. So Apple Podcasts, Spotify. If you search Pro space Extinction podcast, 3 words, you'll find it on all platforms, and all of our debates as well. And my YouTube channel is Universal Extinction on YouTube. I upload all of my TikTok live streams onto my YouTube channel. So there's like 50, 60, 70 hours of me streaming available to watch on my YouTube, which is Universal Extinction.
Yeah, all right, that's fair enough. I guess I'll have a look, but that was my only question anyway. Thanks for the time.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming on, Jake. And as always, please consider joining the movement on our website, proextinction.com. At the bottom of the page is the link to join our Discord and our WhatsApp group. And you can join us and become an activist, join us and ask any questions you have. But yeah, also check out the website and read our manifesto, our FAQ. You can learn more about us there. Also check out my TikTok profile. I make videos every day about all of the most interesting parts of extinctionism, or so I'd like to think. So I'm making lots of videos with lots of information. A lot of it's about psychology and rationality as well, especially because that's a really big factor in why humans are allowing all this suffering. And their psychology, this natural psychology, is the biggest problem right now. It's the biggest obstacle for us. So understanding it definitely helps us know how to deal with it. All right, I'm going to say one final guest. Milo is the only person in the queue right now, but they're really boring. So if anyone else wants to join, now's your chance. Oh God, what have I done? messed up my screen somehow. Swipe left to close. What do you mean? All right, I'm looking at the chat. That's what it is. Anyway, yeah. How do I close this screen, guys? I'm useless at TikTok. I'm useless. I might even have to close the app. Swipe left to close. It's not doing it. All right, well, yeah, I'm just going to end the stream there. So thanks for joining, everyone. And if you want to speak to me and the rest of the team, join our Discord. You'll have access to us 24/7. Come and meet me and the rest of the activists. I didn't make this movement. I'm not the only activist in this movement. There's lots of us. So come and talk to us and get to know us. And yeah, there's actually quite a few of our channels on TikTok. Quite a few of us. We've got loads of people making videos about extinction, not just me. I mean, I probably am the best one for it, not to toot my own horn. But yeah, check us out, get more involved. And I'll probably do more streaming tomorrow.